Welcome to Monarchist Minute. I'm your host, William Staut, here with Vice Chancellor Clements Magnolia. And
Hello.
today on Monarchist Minute, we are going to put our friendship on the line by having an unmoderated debate about Trump and Zelinsky's meeting at the White House.
I really think you're putting way too much stock into this. This is the first point I want to get out about this whole debacle between the two is that it's not as terrible as people want to make it out to be. I feel people want to say, "Oh, this is the worst thing in the world. It's the end of the world. America has completely forfeit her position in the world." And I'm like, do y'all hear yourselves? I mean, seriously, do you hear yourselves? He's been in office for about, what, 45 days now? And everyone's acting as if it's the end of the world, which they've been doing for every single other thing beforehand. It's the end of the world. It's the end of the world. It's the end of the world. It's not the end of the world.
I honestly don't disagree with you, but I still have to say it looked pretty bad.
Oh, I don't disagree with you on that, but our disagreement's the fact of who we thought was in the wrong, though.
Oh, yes, and I'm sure we'll have plenty of time going over that and probably lambasting each other and maybe even insulting each other, but we will cross that bridge in a moment. So, before we begin, how are you today?
I'm all right. My church, we had our deanery retreat yesterday, and we finished it up today. My bishop, or one of my bishop, my suffragette bishop, which is an assistant bishop, came down. Bishop Quigg.
I
He's nice.
hung out. I hung out with a friend yesterday, and today I tried to be productive and failed miserably to be productive. I'm rather disappointed in myself in that regard. I
Yeah,
have a lot of homework I gotta get done.
yeah, I got some stuff I need to do as well. Yeah.
I have Python homework to do, which isn't hard necessarily as much as it's tedious.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway, without further ado, let's get to the meat of this, shall we?
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
since
Let's
you
shall then,
have,
I guess.
yeah, unless you have anything else you want to add beforehand.
Yeah. No.
Hmm. Well, since you have the notes, I'll let you open.
First off, my most important point is that I believe that people are saying, well, who's in the wrong here? Is it Trump or is it Zelensky? I'm going to say right now, my personal opinion, I believe Zelensky's in the wrong here. I'm going to put that out there first. I think we should first just get out our main point here.
And I'm at first I was gonna play the role as devil's advocate, but after watching a 11-minute clip of the argument, the main heated argument that most people think of when we think of that, I have to say I have to give it to Zelensky.
Well,
So
I'll just go through just because I wrote everything chronologically in order of what was happening in that meeting. So I'll just start at first. First off, when it starts off, we can very much visibly see that Zelensky is annoyed the entire time. And this is something that I notice he does. The man knows how to play the media, and he knows how to play it very well. He was a comedian, an actor, so he knows exactly what to do, and he knows how to play Western media. So he knows if he can play them right, he can win over popular support, which he is very good at, and what he was trying to do. That's quite clear. Um, and he was very, very obviously trying to play emotions when Vice President Vance was saying how I can't remember exactly what he said, so I'll be paraphrasing the vice president, of course. Large parts of Ukraine have been destroyed, and President Zelensky tried to then push in. It's like, oh, don't you know exactly how much is destroyed about this and that, and he begins going on about it, and it's very obvious that he is being very combative at the very start, which I see it. I'm like, ooh, no, that's not a good idea.
well, it's interesting that of course we mentioned that Zelensky knows how to play the media because he was a comedian. And then we think of Donald Trump's career as a TV personality, and maybe that's primarily why this ended up kicking off the way it did, because we have two people who basically know how to what's the word we're looking for? Not egg it on, but blow things out of proportion, be dramatic for the sake of appealing to the camera.
Yeah.
But I have to say, I do think JD Vance is a little tone deaf, because like this is a guy that's coming from the war-torn country where he's dealing with air raids almost on the daily. So telling him, "Do you know how much of Ukraine is destroyed?" It's like, yeah, he does. He just came there. It's I agree.
But that wasn't what Vance was saying though. Vance was specifically trying to give perspective to the Americans. He was saying this much, all of this amount of Ukraine has been attacked and destroyed by the Russian invasion, and Zelensky then comes and it's like, yes, but do you not know how? But do you not know how? Yes, but it's, I can't remember exactly what he said. I didn't write what he specifically said down, but it was along the lines of, yes, that was destroyed, but then he tries to go into this long explanation of how this all started with the annexation of Crimea, and going along with that to President Obama, and really it seemed like he was trying to go for a long explanation, which he could very easily try to construe for his own emotional manipulation of the people. One thing I really want to say is the fact that he, and this is where I believe he should be to blame, and his failure. This is where I think Zelensky failed the most, is when he refused to, quote unquote, play with Trump's metaphor. And when he was refusing to play with Trump's metaphor, and I'm like,
well, if I may, as someone who's a little dabbles in linguistics, metaphors aren't necessarily uniform across all cultures. So while he might be fluent in English, that doesn't necessarily mean.
Most certainly not, of course. But at the same time, I would have thought that he would have been at least told about this. I think Lindsey Graham said that he had talked to Zelensky beforehand. So if anything, I would have thought at least somebody would have told him. And very often, Zelensky would have at least seen how Trump talks. Trump loves to use metaphors. So this is not some out of the blue thing, though, and that's the problem. Is that this is something that Trump very often does. He loves to use metaphors. He loves to. He loves it. It's the best thing in the world. It's great. But
all right.
And so Zelensky's refusal to just go with the metaphor, again, it comes back to the fact that he is being combative with Trump, and you do not want to be combative with Trump. It's the last thing you want to do, because we remember, who is Donald Trump. You don't get combative with Donald Trump unless you want him to start spitting into you.
That's what everyone who's ever debated Donald Trump knows. That's the one thing you have to avoid doing with Donald Trump. You got to keep your cool, because that's how Donald Trump wins his debates. He pulls you into that argument because he can just berate you to beat you down. And I think this calls back to his debate with
Jeb.
Not Jeb, but Kamala, where Donald Trump tries to bait Kamala into being combative, into getting into that back-to-back argument. But since Kamala, being a district attorney, is used to having to keep her cool even under constant pressure, just worked through it, and it made Trump come off really, really weak in that debate. But since Zelensky fell into it, Trump ate him alive.
Yeah,
but if I may backtrack
yes,
a minute, when Zelinsky was going over the history, what I think he was trying to do there is build a narrative on why negotiating for peace with Russia doesn't work, because Russia will just go and break whatever agreements they had, as they already have.
Well, okay. But then that brings into question a whole lot more things. That brings into question why was he there in the first place? Because he was there in the first place to sign the mineral deal, which was to then get U.S. interest into the country, which was to broker a peace deal. So then, if that was his point, to what was the usage of that, then otherwise to come to the U.S. and use that as an attempt at emotional manipulation of the United States public?
Well, going to do that a little bit, but that's part of winning the hearts and minds. I mean, when Churchill did his speeches, like the "We Shall Never Surrender" speech he's famous for, he did those speeches intentionally to try and rally America up and rile us up to support the war effort during the Second World War. So Zelensky is doing what he should be doing when he does that, by trying to gain international support.
But then we have to remember, why is he here? He's not here for that. He knows he's not here for that. And that's why I believe he's in the wrong. He knows for a fact he isn't here for that. He knows he's here because Trump wants to make a deal with him. And for him to then purposely, if we're going with this idea, that he was trying to do it as a way to drum up international support. If he's purposely doing that, it shows that he doesn't actually care about what Trump has to say. He just wants to use this as an opportunity to better himself, instead of working with Trump, who is trying to work with him at the same time. And that just means that in reality, he's going to come off as the worst person out of this, because he is, he's basically lying. He's just lying for his reasoning to come here. That's dishonorable, and then it means that the Trump people, I can't even say Trump people, because even Senator Lindsey Graham and Dan Crenshaw, who are both two of the most pro-war Republicans, came out and said that what Zelensky did was disrespectful. Then it proves them right, that what Zelensky did was disrespectful. That he wasn't coming here to actually make a deal. He was coming here to use it as a propaganda tool. I'm obviously not saying that's what you're saying, but I'm saying, like, if we're going through that hypothetical.
Right. So that being said, what's next on your list of notes? Because I think we've beaten this first part of the debate today.
The part where I believe Zelensky's second most important mistake came in, alone in the beginning, which is just so utterly wrong. He was saying that Ukraine was completely alone in the beginning. No one, basically didn't say, he wasn't able to say that exactly, because the fact that Trump and Vance cut him off, but that Ukraine was alone in the beginning, they weren't getting helped, which is just utterly wrong. As soon as the war began, Europe and the United States began pouring weapons and money into Ukraine, as we should have. I agree that we should have. I don't like the Russians as much as the next guy. I believe that they're illegally occupying lands in multiple places. That's besides the point. I also think Putin's a sack of shit. But again, besides the point. But again, just alone in the beginning, again, he is being combative. He's not trying to actually make a deal here. He's very clearly being combative in this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do agree. It was wrong to say he was alone in the beginning, because he almost immediately, Ukraine was just basically handed billions upon billions of dollars in support. And while I do feel we should have kept up with being consistent with that support, we shouldn't have given Russia any rest or reprieve, and unfortunately we did in fact give them rest and reprieve. To say that Ukraine has been standing in this alone isn't. We have been giving them tons of support, even if it's half-hearted support. But
I don't agree with that.
No.
We have been giving him support. We've been giving him money. We have given more money. I think we've given twice as much as what Europe has given combined. I think. We've given them weapons. We've given them money. We have been giving them stuff. So to say that we haven't been giving them is just flat out wrong to say that. But we have been certainly supportive of Ukraine under the Biden administration. That was just a sheer fact of the matter. Now, if we have disagreements on how much we should have supported them, that's another point to argue over. But certainly, we have been very much supportive of Ukraine in diplomatic and materialistic efforts. Really, I should let you go.
Yes, and I think we can both agree that in the case of supporting Ukraine, Europe has definitely not pulled the weight it should. No comment, or?
No. Well, Europe certainly has. I mean, Europe was still for a while using Russian gas, and even then starting to go through China to get their resources, which the Chinese were then also getting stuff from the Russians as well, because China is, of course, working with Russia. And so, really, Europe has been utterly inefficient in their attempts, as they have been still just basically, maybe not directly, but indirectly funding Russia with their resource extractions and such, specifically the German government in their attempts to get rid of nuclear energy, because, of course, as Die Grüne would say, nuclear energy is all evil and yucky and dangerous, so dangerous, which then means, well, what do we got to do? Well, we got to get the Russian gas, which, of course, was funding Russia.
And I absolutely adore the European moral outrage at America's sudden change in foreign policy, just because they've basically enabled this horrible situation themselves.
And Trump told them. I think it was it back in 2019, I believe? I think it was back in 2019 when he told the Europeans and he told Germany, stop buying Russian gas. You're enabling them. You're literally funding Putin. And they were like, no. They were laughing at him. They were literally laughing at him when he said that. So but they can't say that, oh, we're innocent. It's like, no, you're not. You are guilty in this as well. You funded them. Don't try and say you're an innocent party in this when you're not. Now, one point I wanted to move off to, and I believe this is a pretty good one, is this is one where people were really hitting back against Vance for saying, when Vance said to Zelinsky, say thank you. And people were, of course, saying, oh, Vance, what's wrong with you? You're terrible, it's horrible, you shouldn't do that. And I'm like, No, I think what Vance was doing is Vance was giving him advice. He was saying to them, say thank you. Because, again, to work with Trump, you gotta fluff his ego.
But, of course, he can't just say that out loud, because if he does, it's going to be too obvious, and then Trump's going to get mad at him. So he's got to act like he's... I really don't think so. I really don't think so. Trump likes it when his ego is stroked. I really don't agree with you on that. I really think that if he had said it, it really would have helped him out. No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm just saying...
Oh, sorry.
What I said was, and Vance can't say that out loud, that he's trying to advise Zelensky to just say, just fluff the dude's ego, or...
Obviously, of course.
A little bit, because if he says that out loud, Trump's going to hear that, and then Trump's going to get defensive. So he's got to play the part of Trump's yes man in that regard, at least in attitude.
Yeah. But again, I don't agree with people when they say that Vance was clearly in the wrong for saying that. Now, certainly you could make a good case that he was in the wrong for saying that, but I don't think so. I think Vance was trying to say, "Hey, say thank you." In his voice, he said, "Say thank you." Like, say, dude, say thank you. Say thank you. It'll help. Because Vance and Trump want this deal. They're not Russian assets. For heaven's sakes, they are not Russian assets. Stop with this asininity. And they want this deal to get done because it helps America by giving us resources that we need so that we don't have to buy it off of China. and it gives us a specific material and money. We know money makes the world go around in Ukraine, which specifically gives us an interest to make sure Ukraine is stable and secure. And again, Zelensky, combative during this entire thing. I don't think he's being genuine. And over time, he has shown that he just wants to keep on fighting this war, which he cannot win.
Well, at this point, I think it's safe to say, even if Ukraine can't win this war decisively, which I think we can agree they can't, but I do think enough damage has been done to Russia that Russia is going to not be able to be a player for a significant amount of time.
Oh, certainly. I mean, Russia has been embarrassed on the national stage. Oh, sorry. On the international stage.
They won't see it that way.
But... obvious. Well, I think Putin knows it. But Russia has, of course, been embarrassed on an international stage. The fact that they weren't able to take Kiev, they were forced to withdraw. And although they did successfully take Mariupol and the southern coast and the southern regions, they have lost Kherson, the capital of the Kherson region. They failed to take Zaporizhzhia. And the siege of Mariupol was a long and stretched out battle. They lost manpower that they very much would need. Now, they have a much higher manpower pool, and of course Putin is very much willing to throw men in it. He could not care less. The dude bombed his own people in the early 2000s. He killed like 1,000 of his own people. The dude is willing to kill as many of his own people as he wants for his own political power. And Ukraine simply doesn't have those numbers. But I remember reading an article about this. The Russian economy is being propped up by this war. They are having to pull out people from Central Asia to be workers in their country because they are, of course, running low on manpower. Not as much as Ukraine is, but still. And as soon as this war is over, the Russian economy will at the very least buckle. At the very least.
So why will it buckle if all their manpower returns to the workforce?
Because their economy has been set onto its they took the war economy economic choice or national choice. I can't remember what the term is in Hoi 4 basically.
National focus.
No, that's not a national focus, but government policy wise, the government policy they took war economy. And as soon as the war is over, they're going to have to switch back to civilian economy, and they're going to realize that it's a whole lot harder when you have lost a large amount of manpower. You're going to have troops coming back into the workforce, in which your economy is already pretty unstable. Thank you, Lord. It is a mobilization law. Thank you, but it's already pretty unstable. As of right now, they're constantly having to throw money into it to keep it going. So you're gonna take a small shock into the economy, but due to the structure is rotten. You hit that structure with a shock, it'll come crashing down. Maybe not completely crashing down, but it's certainly gonna buckle at the least.
Now, I'm curious to see how this will affect the demographic crisis long term in Russia, because
it's gonna be another punch in the face of the demographic issue.
Now, the real defining issue isn't going to be the soldiers who died. It's going to be those who were crippled or severely injured.
Yeah.
Because if there's one lesson we can learn from the Byzantines, going back to Basil II, it's that blind soldiers are far worse for your enemy than dead ones. For those of you who don't know, Basil II, also called Basil the Bulgar Slayer, infamously blinded the Bulgarian army, his prisoners of war, and then sent them back blinded rather than executed, because the idea was that their economy would be too busy focused on taking care of this now largely blinded population to be able to actually wage a war in the future.
Yeah.
Horrific, yes, but rather sickly ingenious.
A smart choice, I'll say that much. It was hurt is meant, but yeah. But it's not going to be just them. It's also going to be Ukraine, which is why Ukraine needs to take this deal, because it is offering that the U.S. will put funds into their economy, which will then attract those people who have also fled away from Ukraine to come back to their country for an opportunity of an economic opportunity, which Ukraine also needs because their economy has been kind of generally stagnant since independence.
Yeah, well, that's just a larger problem with Eastern Europe, but this goes into another thing that I think in any potential treaty that needs to be included, that under no circumstances can Ukraine be barred from joining the EU.
I think that's a possibility. One thing is for certain that the treaty will probably have something along the lines of they cannot join NATO, though, due to the fact that Putin will just flat out not accept that. Under no circumstances will he accept that.
I can understand not joining NATO, but they need to be at least allowed to join the EU because
The issue with the EU, Ukraine joining the EU has a lot more ramifications that I think people don't realize, and that comes down to agriculture.
right. I know about the agricultural issue.
Well, due to the fact that right-wing parties, even pro-EU right-wing parties in Europe, are fanatically against the idea, or not fanatically, but generally against the idea of Ukraine joining the EU, as it would then hurt one of their major voting blocks.
And the funny part is, this has been a problem going back to the EU's founding, and originally, this is why France and Germany didn't want Poland to join the EU. Because basically what happens is once you get another agricultural state with cheap food, it just chases out the agricultural sectors of the previous members, and it's been an unavoidable problem going all the way back to the EU's founding.
Yeah.
And it just so happens that the EU, of course, sits on basically the holy grail of agriculture.
Yeah, Ukraine has some of the largest amount of what is it? It's black soil in the world.
So they can kind of cheat, not need fertilizers, but
yeah.
I do think that the EU needs to be on the table just because, one, it'd be good for their economy, but two, having those ties with Europe will help deter Russia, because if Europe gets an invested interest in Ukraine, that's also going to be helpful. And I'd rather Europe have an invested interest in Ukraine than America have an invested interest in Ukraine, just because I want to build that sort of relationship with Europe where Europe isn't as dependent on America as they have been in the past. I want to see a strong and powerful Europe again. If not for any reason but to take some of the burden off of us.
I mean, that's certainly a possibility, but I don't think that really is as possible as we want to realize, is the Europeans are kind of stupid in how they try to go around doing that, as can be seen when the US, during just a few weeks ago, or a week or two ago, when it was like, oh, Trump's gonna work with Putin, Europeans are like, oh, we need to work with China then. Like, are you like? I don't think Europeans are really. How do I word this? The Europeans, I think, have so much knocked themselves over that they aren't capable of seeing themselves working by themselves, and so they have to latch on to someone else to be able to do anything.
So you're saying Europe has become too domesticated, is basically what you're saying.
Oh, I guess. I mean, yeah, it's a way to look at it.
Or, but I agree with you. They're not very smart, but I do think a new generation of Europeans is coming, and it's being awoken primarily by this conflict, and we're seeing that in the European youth. And that way, Europe is struggling much from the same things we are, is that they have a aging political class.
I don't know. I don't trust the European youth. The European youth seem too stupid. I
They
mean,
say the
the
same thing
German
about.
European youth proceeded to vote for Die Linke and the AfD more than the other political parties. So I don't really, I don't know. The British youth is kind of rather stupid. Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe the French youth might be good, maybe the Italian youth, but I don't know.
I
I
have
don't know.
hope in the British youth because the British youth actually want to see the monarchy get more involved in politics.
Uh, I mean, hopefully. I don't know. I just generally, I in general don't trust the youth because the youth nowadays are still turning more and more to green ideology, and I'm fanatically anti-green ideology. Then again,
Anywho,
that's just me.
hmm,
There was one final point that in my notes, and that was Trump saying, oh no, it was two things actually. Um, Another massive mistake that Zelensky made was conflating Trump with Biden and Obama, which I'm like, that is that like at that point I was like, okay, I'm pretty darn sure he just wants to make Trump mad at that point.
yeah, not wise.
Yeah, I think we can both agree that was just that again. That's why I really think he was just trying to be combative during that because his his mannerisms, his tone, his what he was saying, he just really seemed like he wanted to be combative during that. And then my final point that I wrote in was Trump saying that Putin respects him and will want to work with him. I think Trump has kind of deluded himself a little bit on that one. I'll give it to to the opposition on this one. I'll give it to them on this one that yeah, like I don't really know what Trump thinks he has with Putin. A lot of it I think is Trump wants to think he has like some good relationship with certain world leaders, and I don't think he actually does. And I think a lot of it just comes down to his sort of Nixonian political international affairs, which is what I believe the idea of act completely crazy so your opponent has no idea what's going on and has to constantly be on the defensive.
How is that working for him so far?
I mean, it was working when he was in his first term, and it's kind of working now. It's way too early. I mean, it's exceedingly way too early for us to say now. As again, he's only been in office for about 45 days. We can't possibly make a detailed analysis of it now.
Right, right. But these have been some strange. I don't know if it's just been the press, but these have seemed like some strangely eventful weeks, though.
This whole year has been. My bishop Quigg was saying that at my deanery retreat. He said to us, he said, January has been the longest year I have ever been through, and I'm almost 60, and I'm 65.
To quote Vladimir Lenin, who we will never hold in high regard, but this is perhaps one of the most.
Rest in piss.
Yes, indeed, but this is perhaps one of the smartest things he said. There are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen. In these past few weeks,
Yes.
decades have happened.
Decades have happened. Yes, I agree. Yeah.
It's exhausting.
All I can say is, gentlemen, this is Democracy Manifest.
I really wish they would let us use the soundboard and stage channels.
I know, I would have used that.
Discord, if you're hearing this, let us use the soundboard and stage channel, please.
All right. We have any more points?
No, I've got nothing.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. I kind of forgot what happened earlier in the week, and really, it's just the only thing that's been in my mind is just this. Again, everything's happening so fast that everything that happened 2 days ago goes out the window.
I've stopped trying to keep track of all the budget cuts Doge is putting through. All I have to say is that their IRS layoff didn't stop me from getting my tax return, so I don't care.
I really don't think this is as bad as what the Democrats are trying to say. That's it's so terrible that that people being laid off. Like I'm sorry, but everyone knows that our administration is overbloated. Everyone knows it is. So to try and act as if this is the worst thing in the world, what are you doing? There are so many more things the Democrats could hit back on, but they want to die on this hill.
I don't even think we've gotten to the worst of the budget cuts yet. It's going to get much worse before it gets better.
Probably. I don't know.
Like, wait till they start slashing the defense budget, because you know that's coming. That's next.
Well, yeah, they already said it. I mean that's been needing to happen for years, anyways. Everyone knows that the military has been so overly funded. Everyone knows that the military spends way too much money that they know they don't need.
One criticism I've seen and that I absolutely agree with is that they haven't while they've cut all this other foreign aid, they haven't touched any of the subsidies to Israel yet. And I agree that is bullcrap that they haven't.
No, we're not getting into this. We're not. No. We don't talk about this part, okay? Hey, I told you we're not going to be talking about this part. It's not very geschmugging of you. Next thing you know, I'm going to be calling Mossad on you. Hey.
Is that your attempt at like a...
I know, it's really bad. It's really bad.
God awful.
I know, it's really bad. I'm sorry. It's like my worst accent I have is my... It's kind of like my... I mean, I kind of have adopted as my comical Jewish accent at this point. Like, I don't take it seriously.
You almost sounded like Dracula.
Hey, but this one's got a little bit more effort into it, you know? It's a little bit more. Hey, what's going on here?
Oh,
I don't know. It kind of reminds me of the one from the Simpsons, I guess. Now you are a man, Mazel Tov.
Oh, Lord have mercy. Anywho, let's wrap this up. We've had a nice brief episode. It's been a while since we've had a shorter episode.
We just gotta wait for the Groypers to come and say that we're secretly being bought and paid by Israel. In which I say, I wish.
I wish. We need the funding.
That'll be the day. That'll be the day when we're getting bought and paid by Israel.
It reminds me of a joke I once said. It's like, if I ever get big enough that I get a diss track written about me by Eminem, I won't even be mad because that will mean I've made it. Gosh. We're big enough that Israel is lobbying us. That means we've made it.
Yeah, that means we've made it in the world. Okay, let's...
Alright, enough of that. Alright, please join me in prayer in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us of our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening on Monarchist Minute. We hope to see you next time, same place. If you're watching this on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe, and share with your friends and family. If you're listening to this on Spotify or another streaming service, hit subscribe or hit follow, whatever the system is, to get the notification every time we load a new episode.
All the bells and whistles. Gotta hit all those bells and whistles.
Follow us on social media. If you want to help out the cause, get a hold of us via DM, email, or join us on Discord. All those links will be in the description below. Unfortunately, YouTube does not allow them to be clickable links for some stupid reason, but the links will be in the description below. Until next time, may God bless you. May God bless the United States of America. Thank you, and good night.